I believe we build our lives on foundations that might seem solid until the moment they aren't. I know this better than most. My name is Ethan Reynolds, and 7 years ago, I was Seattle's Golden Boy of Sustainable Architecture, the youngest recipient of the Northwest Design Excellence Award, the visionary behind the city's revolutionary waterfront redevelopment, the man who rose from a construction worker's son to reshaping the Seattle skyline. My story isn't about the buildings I created, but about how I rebuilt myself after everything I constructed came crashing down. I started with nothing. My father was a foreman who taught me to respect materials, to understand that every beam and joint had purpose. I worked construction sites through college, learning architecture from the ground up, literally. After graduating with honors, I took every small job I could, building a reputation for innovative, sustainable designs that honored both the environment and the people who would inhabit those spaces. By 32, I had my own firm, Reynolds Architectural Design. By 35, I had transformed abandoned waterfront warehouses into mixed-use spaces that breathed new life into forgotten corners of Seattle. Success came with sacrifices, 18-hour days, skipped vacations, a relentless drive that left little room for anything else. Until Vanessa. She walked into a design conference where I was speaking, challenging my take on interior spaces with such insight that I found myself redesigning an entire project approach based on her comments. She was brilliant, an interior designer who understood that spaces weren't just about aesthetics, but about how people moved, felt, and lived within them. Within 6 months, we were collaborating on projects. Within a year, we were married. Vanessa became more than my wife. She was my creative partner, the person who turned my architectural frameworks into livable art. We complemented each other perfectly. My structural precision balanced by her intuitive understanding of how spaces should feel. My life had never made more sense. When I finally completed Cascade Vista, our mountain retreat in the Cascades, I thought I'd built the perfect symbol of our partnership. I designed every inch of that $4.2 million sanctuary myself. The way the morning light filtered through floor-to-ceiling windows, how the great room opened to panoramic mountain views, the private studio where Vanessa could pursue her artistic passions while I worked in the city. The night I showed her the completed retreat, we opened champagne on the cedar deck I'd built with my own hands. She cried, telling me it was everything she'd ever dreamed of. I remember her exact words, "You've given me a place to be truly myself." I gave her the keys to everything I'd built, not just the mountain house, but my company, my accounts, my heart. I thought we were building our empire together. I couldn't have been more wrong. The first hairline fractures appeared so subtly I almost missed them. Architecture taught me that the most catastrophic structural failures often begin with microscopic flaws. Vanessa started spending more time at Cascade Vista, citing the need for, quote, creative inspiration away from Seattle's constant rain and noise. Reasonable enough, I'd built it to be her sanctuary as much as mine. But then came the phone calls that would end abruptly when I walked into a room. The vague explanations for weekend trips to the mountain house. The growing distance between us and our downtown penthouse, where we once couldn't keep our hands off each other. I told myself it was nothing, just the natural evolution of a marriage settling into comfortable rhythms. But the architect in me couldn't ignore the subtle shifts in our foundation. I noticed small financial discrepancies in our accounts, $5,000 here, $8,000 there. Individually, they weren't enough to raise alarms, but together they formed a pattern I couldn't ignore. I installed a security system at Cascade Vista, telling Vanessa it was for her protection when she stayed there alone. She thanked me for being so thoughtful. I didn't tell her about the cameras in the office or the alerts that would ping my phone whenever someone accessed important files. I still wanted to believe I was being paranoid. Then came the industry gala at the Museum of Modern Art. My firm was being honored for our work on the city's first carbon-negative office complex. As Vanessa and I circulated through Seattle's architectural elite, I spotted Richard Blackwood watching us from across the room. Richard had been my mentor years ago, before a bitter falling out over ethical corners he wanted to cut on a major downtown project. Now he headed a rival firm that consistently lost bids to mine. There was something in his smile that night, a satisfaction that made my skin crawl. Later, I noticed a young man hovering near Vanessa at the bar. Tall, with the kind of effortless good looks that come with youth and privilege. When I approached, Vanessa's smile was too bright, too rehearsed. "Ethan, this is Caleb Wilson, the interior design collaborator I've been telling you about." He's been helping me with some concepts for the Mountain House. I didn't remember her mentioning any collaborator. Caleb's handshake was firm, his smile perfect, but there was something proprietary in how he looked at my wife. Something familiar. That night, lying beside Vanessa in our bed, I watched her sleeping peacefully while my mind raced. The way she and Caleb had talked in shorthand, finishing each other's sentences. The slight flush in her cheeks when he mentioned their, quote, productive sessions at Cascade Vista. The text notification that made her excuse herself when Richard Blackwood approached us. That night, staring at the ceiling while she slept peacefully beside me, I realized the most terrifying question wasn't whether she was being faithful, but how much of our entire relationship might have been a lie. I started checking the security footage more frequently. I saw nothing incriminating at first. Just Vanessa working in her studio, occasionally taking calls on the deck. But I knew something wasn't right. The architect in me recognized when a structure wasn't plumb. Then came the email that collapsed everything. I was at my office, reviewing plans for Seattle's new Central Library project, when the notification appeared on my screen. From Vanessa. Subject line: moving on. There was no text in the body of the email, just a photo. Vanessa and Caleb on our deck at Cascade Vista. Sunset bathing them in golden light as they toasted with glasses of the 30-year-old Macallan I'd been saving for our 10th anniversary. Caleb wearing my favorite cashmere sweater, Vanessa with a smile I'd never seen before. Triumphant, almost predatory. Below the image, just one line of text. This is my house now. I've moved in with Caleb. Don't waste time fighting it. My name is on the deed. My hands didn't shake. My breath didn't quicken. Instead, a strange calm settled over me. The same focused clarity I experience when solving a complex structural problem. I opened our security app and reviewed the footage from the past month. There it was, the evidence I'd been blind to. Vanessa and Caleb using my retreat whenever I traveled for business. His car appearing minutes after mine left the driveway. The two of them laughing as they drank my wine and slept in my bed. But what truly gutted me was the footage of them in my home office. Photographing documents, rifling through files, Vanessa accessing my computer with the password I'd trusted her with. The worst moment. Vanessa standing on the dock by the mountain lake, slowly removing her wedding ring, then casually tossing it into the deep water with a laugh as Caleb applauded. If you've ever felt the shock of discovering someone you trusted completely was living a double life, hit that like button and subscribe to hear how I handled this devastating betrayal. I kept watching the footage, following the digital breadcrumbs of their betrayal. I saw Vanessa on the phone, clearly discussing business details that should have been confidential. I pulled up our bank statements and found nearly $175,000 missing, transferred in small increments to an account I didn't recognize. A quick search revealed it belonged to a shell company registered to Caleb Wilson. But the true scope of the betrayal became clear when I found files from my personal server had been accessed and emailed to an external address. Richard Blackwood's private email. This wasn't just an affair. This was corporate espionage. This was theft. This was the systematic dismantling of everything I'd built. In that moment, watching them laugh in my home, drink my champagne, and plot the destruction of everything I'd built, something shifted inside me. The architect in me, the man who created beautiful structures with precision and care, suddenly understood he needed to dismantle 3 lives with that same methodical attention to detail. I didn't call Vanessa. I didn't confront her. Instead, I called Marcus Chen, my attorney since college, and the only person I now trusted completely. "Marcus," I said when he answered, "I need you to drop everything and come to my office. Bring whatever you need to freeze accounts, file emergency injunctions, and document theft and corporate espionage. And, Marcus, don't tell anyone you're coming." While waiting for him, I responded to Vanessa's email with just 4 words. "Are you sure about this?" Then I blocked her number. Marcus arrived within the hour, and I showed him everything: the footage, the financial discrepancies, the evidence of stolen proprietary information. His usual calm demeanor darkened as he witnessed the extent of the betrayal. "This is criminal, Ethan. Not just the theft, but the corporate espionage. We're talking potential federal charges." "Then let's make sure they stick," I replied. "I want everything done by the book. No emotional reactions they can use against me. Just cold, methodical justice. Marcus nodded. We should reach out to Richard Blackwood's ex-wife, Maya. She went through something similar when they divorced. He tried to steal her half of their architectural firm. She might have information we can use. Why would she help me? Because Richard left her with nothing but a desire to see him fail. Also, she's now one of the most respected forensic accountants in Seattle. That evening, I met Maya Blackwood at a quiet bar far from the architectural scene. She was nothing like I expected. Not bitter or broken, but sharp, focused, and surprisingly funny about the disaster her marriage had become. Richard doesn't just want to compete with you, Ethan, she explained, nursing a whiskey. He wants to destroy you. You represent everything he pretends to be. Talented, ethical, respected for the right reasons. He did the same to me. And your wife and this Caleb? They're just tools to him. He probably promised Caleb a position at his firm. Promised your wife? Well, whatever she thought, she wanted more than what she had with you. Will you help me? I asked. Her smile was small but determined. I've been waiting 5 years for someone to ask me that question. What followed was a masterclass in systematic retaliation. Marcus filed emergency injunctions freezing all our joint accounts. Maya helped identify where the money had been funneled and documented the financial fraud. I provided the security footage proving the theft of proprietary information. Within 24 hours, Vanessa and Caleb found themselves locked out of accounts, their credit cards declined, their access to my firm's systems revoked. The security system at Cascade Vista was remotely reprogrammed, leaving them trapped outside the gates in the rain. I watched on my phone as they panicked, Vanessa furiously trying her code over and over while Caleb paced behind her. 3 days later, federal agents arrived at Cascade Vista with search warrants. I watched remotely as they confiscated laptops containing my stolen files. I saw Vanessa crying, pointing at Caleb, clearly trying to shift blame. I saw Caleb's true character emerge as he stepped away from her, already creating distance. When I finally spoke to Vanessa, it was through attorneys. Her bravado had evaporated, replaced by desperate negotiation attempts. I'll sign everything back to you, she offered through her lawyer. Just drop the charges, please, Ethan. Ask her why I should do that, I told my attorney. Ask her if she would have shown me any mercy if their plan had succeeded. Meanwhile, Maya and I began constructing a case against Richard Blackwood. We documented every instance where he'd used my stolen information to undermine my business. We found evidence of similar schemes with other architects. Most damning, we discovered he'd been falsifying environmental impact reports on his projects, the very ethical violation that had ended our professional relationship years ago. The Washington State Architectural Board was very interested in our findings. I felt nothing watching their lives unravel. Not satisfaction, not pain, just the focused attention of someone documenting structural failure. The security footage continued to capture the aftermath. Vanessa alone at Cascade Vista after Caleb abandoned her, realizing the extent of what she'd done and what she'd lost. The cameras captured her sitting alone on the deck where they'd once celebrated their theft. Her designer clothes replaced with whatever she could salvage, her phone constantly ringing with calls from creditors and former friends who now wanted nothing to do with her. I felt no joy watching her world collapse, only the cold satisfaction of justice. If you found yourself at rock bottom because of someone else's choices, only to discover an inner strength you never knew you had, leave a comment below. Sometimes our darkest moments reveal what we're truly capable of. 6 months passed. Richard Blackwood's firm collapsed under regulatory investigation. He left Seattle in disgrace, his reputation in the architectural community destroyed. Caleb Wilson faced charges for corporate espionage, eventually accepting a plea deal that included never working in architecture or design again. Vanessa lost everything: her career, her reputation, her future in Seattle. I heard through industry contacts that she'd moved back to her hometown in Michigan, working retail jobs under her maiden name. I won the Central Library contract Richard had tried to steal. Working with Maya, whose forensic precision complemented my creative vision, we developed a landmark structure that combined sustainable innovation with community-centered design. The project won national recognition, cementing my reputation not just in Seattle but across the country. Maya and I developed a partnership that slowly evolved beyond professional collaboration. She understood my caution, my walls, She'd built similar protections around her own heart after Richard's betrayal. We moved slowly, with clear communication and mutual respect. No grandiose promises, just daily demonstrations of trustworthiness and transparency. One rainy evening, sitting in my penthouse overlooking the lights of Seattle, Maya asked me a question I'd been avoiding. Do you regret any of it? Not the marriage, but how you handled the aftermath. I considered this carefully. I regret trusting without verification. I regret believing in a partnership that wasn't equal. But the aftermath? No. They attempted to destroy everything I'd built. They didn't just betray my heart. They tried to dismantle my life's work. And yet, she observed, you're more successful now than before. Because I rebuilt with better materials, I replied, and we both smiled at the architectural metaphor. I sold Cascade Vista eventually. Despite its beauty, it represented a chapter I needed to close. With the proceeds, I purchased property on an island in Puget Sound. There, I designed a new retreat, still beautiful, still open to the natural world, but constructed with stronger foundations and multiple redundant systems. No single point of failure. If this story of betrayal and calculated justice resonated with you, make sure to subscribe for more powerful, real-life stories about the human capacity for deception and redemption. My new home became a symbol of what I'd learned. I didn't stop creating beauty. I didn't stop taking risks. I just built with greater wisdom. Maya often joins me there on weekends, bringing her analytical mind and surprising artistic eye. We're not married, perhaps never will be, but we've created something honest together. A relationship built on shared understanding of how fragile trust can be and how precious when it's genuine. I think about Vanessa sometimes, not with longing, but with a strange sense of distance, as if remembering a building I once designed but now view with a critical professional eye, noting the flaws in my original concept. I don't hate her. I don't waste energy on that emotion. I simply recognize that some structures aren't meant to stand the test of time. Some relationships are built on faulty foundations from the beginning. I don't forgive, but I've stopped looking back. They thought they could take everything, because I was too trusting, too decent to fight back. What they never understood is that the same precision I used to design buildings that withstand earthquakes is the same precision I used to rebuild my life from their betrayal. Some lessons are worth every painful moment it took to learn them. If there's one thing you take from my story, it's this. When someone tries to dismantle what you've built, don't collapse in grief. Instead, survey the damage with a clear eye, salvage what remains of value, and rebuild with stronger materials. And if my story helped you reflect on your own journey through betrayal or rebuilding, please hit that subscribe button and share this video with someone who might need to hear that destruction isn't the end. It's just the necessary clearing of ground before more thoughtful construction begins.